We to get back to the Zoom thing. We're live. I just haven't caught up yet. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to A Branch of Laurels. I'm Ms. Shaxi from On Tier, and this is a weekly interview show with people who are Laurels in the SCA. And tonight, my guest is Tiberius Julius Rufus Primus, and he is a Pelican and a Laurel from the East Kingdom. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks.
Hi. Can you start us off with telling us how you found the SCA and what made you fall in love with it?
Sure. So I live in rural Vermont, so right near the Canadian border, about half an hour away in what we call the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. And everything in Vermont is at least an hour away. And so I'm in a little town called Barton, and it's geographically isolated, not many people. And in 2005, I was looking for a role-playing game group. And so I went on meetup.com, found some people that seemed to post similar things. And we decided to meet up and play some games together. After a few games, one of the guys, Aaron, in the SCA, he's Kenyak. We're driving back to Montpelier, which is about an hour away from home. And he said, "Hey, dude, you ever think of the SCA?" And I had encountered it briefly online looking at things, but I said, yeah, I've thought about it. I knew he did it, but I think I said something to the effect of, I wouldn't mind checking it out, but I don't want people to criticize my thread count. and he laughed and said, nah, the Panther Vale's not like that. And so the Shire of Panther Vale is northeast Vermont and sort of the eastern side of the state. And so about a month later in May of 2005, I went to the big local event called Pantaria. And it was at a campground, and there was about 150 people there or so. And I walked around, and my mom helped me make a broadcloth Roman tunic with band trim and sort of a bad like Joanne or costume toga, which is just like this square that looked like a large napkin that went sort of around, and it was awful. And I walked around in that all weekend, and I watched fighting, and I saw tents, and I saw bardic, and I had a feast, and I had loner feast gear, and I knew this was my thing. Like, these were my people. It was just enough geeky, just enough exciting, had all the elements of, like, I'd never LARPed before, and I had never done anything in a real space, and this sort of had all the trappings of that, but more. And so I went to fight practices and tried to build barrel armor, and bought the wrong kind of trash can because I thought plastic barrel armor, but that wasn't protective at all. And just got up to speed, went to practices. Practice was about 90 minutes away. Wow. And just fell in love with it. And so Kenyak and I and our good friend Gavin, sort of three, started right about the same time. Kenyak had been in the SCA about 1 year longer than we had, and sort of shepherded us through the like where to go to fight practices, how to find people, that sort of thing. And in Vermont, like I'm sure it is anywhere that's really rural, there's pockets of SCA, and then there's great distances in between. So where I am right now, my husband's in the living room, and barring him, it's about 30 to 40 minutes in any direction to find another SCA person. And then it's about 90 minutes to find a fight practice of good value. And even then, once somebody gets grant level or so, it's even farther. I mean, not that every fight practice has value. I don't mean to demean anyone's experience. Every fight practice has value. But to find a good density of fighters is a couple-hour drive one way. And so I found the SCA in 2005. Kenyak went off to Penzik and came home with lots of war stories and hero moments. And then Gavin and I went the year after and have been going ever since, until the pandemic. And so that's it. That's how I found it. And I had left the Army in 2003. And so, entered public school teaching, and life was really good, but I sort of had an itch to do something high focus and high energy. Mm-hmm. And I found fighting was that thing.
Awesome. Did you have an interest in history and beforehand?
Right. My mundane last name means of the Julii. And so my people are legendarily related to the Julii in Rome. And so my biological family is wicked, wicked Italian. And so I had always had this interest in Roman history. And so when Kenyak said, "Hey, have you thought about the SCA?" I was like, "Yeah, one of two things. If I can be a Roman, I'm going to be Tiberius Julius Rufus. If they don't allow Romans, then I'll be like a late medieval Italian, and I'll be Antonio Mauro Giuseppe." And I just went on this list of names. And he said, "Well, it sounds like you're all set, right?" So I always knew I loved Roman history, studied it a lot at university. Just really fell in love with it. And here was a chance to experiment with all those things I had read about. And over the years, it's really challenged some of my assumptions around what I thought I knew about, especially the workaday stuff like pouches, bags, camping, marching, wearing the armor, just how flexible and movable it can be. All those things that I thought I understood until I started doing it.
Yeah, it's
So,
the living history aspect of what we do can be really enlightening.
right.
I know that I've made garments and worn them and then been like, no, this is not the way this could have been.
Right.
This has to change. And once I get it dialed in, it's like, okay, this works for sure. So did you start making pottery in the SCA, or was that something that you already did beforehand?
No, I didn't. Pottery was something that thanks to my great grandmother, I think I have some good artistic genes, meaning so I have some talents waiting to be earned somewhere in there. And I was supposed to go to art school for university, but I went for a standard liberal arts education instead. I was worried about jobs in the future and things. So I have always drawn and created and done things, but I had never worked in clay. And that was one of my life goals, was I finally want to try pottery. But in 2009, 2009, I switched jobs, and I had been commuting about 90 minutes one way for a long time. And so when I stopped commuting and got a job about 7 minutes from my house, I gained about 3 hours a day in my life that I didn't know I was missing.
Yeah.
And there was a pottery class about half an hour away, which is one of the few things in Vermont that wasn't an hour away. And so I went and took it. And over the course of about a year, I learned what I could learn from this self-taught fellow. He was really amazing, especially with bowls. But when it came to some of the crazy stuff, I would pull up on my iPad and put on the wheel in front of me to try and figure out how to make, and he would say, "Well, you make really weird poop." Sorry, I don't.
Awkward.
Yeah, he said, "You make some weird shit." And I'm like, "Well, it's a Roman thing. I'm trying to make a cheese press." And he's like, "Okay." And so I would try to figure out how to do it. But I was working in stoneware, and that's a little too hard, and the glazes are a little too high fire for what I was after.
Right.
And simultaneously, I'd go to a weekend at Burka, which is one of the regional events near me. That's one of my favorites. It's a huge fighting tournament, and then lots and lots of shopping. And for those first 10 years or so of Burkas, I was assembling the things I thought I needed. Like, what's a good Skadian sort of need to be self-sufficient? And it's like stuff to sleep with, stuff to fight with, stuff to eat and drink with, and then stuff to wear, right? So I had gotten my clothing sort of settled, and I had my armor sort of settled, as much as armor ever can be, because it's a constant evolution.
Always.
But I was looking for good Roman feast gear, and I could find none anywhere. So I decided to make it. And so I just studied until I could do it, which meant finding the right clay and finding the right finish and teaching my hands to make the forms that are supposed to be there rather than what are modernly there.
Mm-hmm. And I found too, when I started throwing pottery, your body has, like, it tends to make the forms it wants to make. And sometimes you have to not make that because that's not what you're trying to do.
Right. The folks in my pottery class, I'd say, "What are you making?" They say, "I don't know. We'll see what the clay lets me make, or what the clay wants to make." And I'm like, no. Clay makes what I want it to make. And, it's this battle of will between me and gravity and centrifugal force until it comes out. Yeah, but pottery breaks my heart every time I do it. Like, I don't know if other art forms are like this. Well, they must be. But, I make something on the wheel that has to get a little harder, and then I trim it. And then after I trim it, I dry it. And then if it hasn't cracked or destroyed itself, then I might be able to burnish it and finish it. And then maybe the kiln will eat it then. And it's just, like all these precious babies die along the way just to get the one cup that isn't quite right, and then start it all over.
Yeah, and nothing's ever quite right.
No,
Doesn't
nothing.
matter what it is, it's never
Right.
perfect. But I think that that's what keeps us going, right?
Right.
Right. Awesome. Well, did you hook yourself to appear during your early journey to kind of be fostered?
Yes. So early on, like I said, Vermont's really sparse and there's just not a lot of people around. So there was a group of when I say young fighters, I don't mean just young in the SCA fighters. And one of the squires from the other side of the state sort of organized us and brought us under the tutelage of a duchess that lives about 90 minutes away. And so we all became her armsmen as part of her household. And her job was to help find us knights and masters that could mentor us in our fighting because she knew everybody. We knew no one. And as she got to know us, she would know sort of where to steer us in terms of personality and our needs. And, she was a duchess, so she understood fighting from her perspective and really knew how to match make for us.
Right.
And so in 2006, she wanted me to go to Great Northeast War, which is a large event in Maine. It's another big regional event. And she wrote a letter of introduction to Sir Gareth Grey de Wilton, who lives in Nova Scotia. And so that's how things are out here. Like I'm in Vermont, my knight lives in Nova Scotia, and it's just, that's the way it works because it's an hour to another Scadian or half an hour. So anyway, I got to know him and I drove to a couple events in Maine and New Hampshire to meet with him and fight with him and have him watch my fighting and end up squiring to him at the next Burka. And it turns out his was the very first knighting I ever saw. At my first Burka, I saw him knighted.
Oh,
and then at the next one, I was able to become his squire. So it was really, he has been instrumental in helping me understand my own path in the SCA. Because I think, if I look back at myself, I said, okay, I want to be a knight. Like that's my goal in life. That's what I will do. But along the way, he said, you have to serve and you have to create. And you have to fight. Knights are expected to be all these things. And you'll demonstrate your prowess on the field in this way, but you have to be able to understand and value service and understand, value, and support arts. And so I did those things. It just turns out my path to knighthood included some pretty large and substantial, not distractions, but side quests along the way.
Yeah.
So he's been a great counsel and peer and supporter and challenger of my journey along the way.
So how much distance between the two of you?
About 20 hours of driving.
Holy cow. So how do you manage that? Do you use video or how do you manage that?
So we talk pretty often, and we go through phases where it's lots of talking and lots of not talking, but it really depends on the situation. In terms of fighting progression, it's like every event we go to, that's what we're going to be doing for pieces of it. We save each other time. Mm-hmm. And then there's things to work on through the rest of the year. And I have lots of aunts and uncles too, that are connected to his household and my household. And, they all talk to each other apparently. And so, if I go down here, I might work with this one. And he's been really good about helping me find people that work with my particular style too, because we fight a little differently. We're both aggressive, we're both honorable, we're both courteous, decisive, but he doesn't fight with center grip the same way I do. I don't fight with strapped at all. And so it really does help.
Do you do a center grip, like rectangular shield?
I have an oval, a clipeus, a cavalryman's shield. And so that's what I use. It's pretty active, as they all have to be, right?
Yeah, fun. Do you what was I going to ask you? Oh, does your husband fight as well? Have you been able to spar with him?
So I met him through some mutual friends, and he was intrigued by this whole Penzik thing and stuff and wanted to go to a fight practice. And so he went to one, got in armor, sparred with me until he connected with a great hammer into my shoulder, and then immediately gave up and said he wasn't going to do that anymore. Oh. And then he became a combat archer. So, he understands how to give and take hits. He shoots people. He's found that's sort of his thing. He really loves it. Yeah, he looks great in the armor and he's a good shot. And he has this little thing where like wiggles his butt before he shoots. So it's like his tell, but the arrows always go, the bolts go exactly where he says they're going to.
Like a cat going after its prey.
Yeah. Oh, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really fun.
That's super cute.
Yeah, so he is a really dynamite combat archer, and he travels with a crew that all train together, and they do a great job. There's several of them right around us,
And
and
you brought
so
him into the SCA, or was he already?
he was not in already. He wanted to see what this weird thing was that I didn't sounded pretty interesting, and so he immediately started taking all of my really nice garb and the jewelry, and now he's got his own. But yeah, he's definitely a clothing horse. We came. I remember one burqa, his first burqa. I'm down in the bear pits fighting, and burqa bear pits are a series of, I want to say they're 8 by 8 foot taped squares on the ground at a hotel. So it's like a convention with armored combat and SCA stuff. And one waits in line, waits for an empty square, gets in, stays there if they win, goes and reports in if they lose, right? So it's just this wonderful slugfest for about 3 or 4 hours. And I'm in there fighting, get some water, and here comes my husband in one Coptic tunic. And then he sees one of the marshals has on that Coptic tunic. So he has to go back upstairs and change and get a different Coptic tunic. And then somebody else in the hall had that one, or it was too close, so we had to change again. So no, he loves it. I'm definitely lucky in that he's really into it, but he sees it through like the person that's been in for about 5 or 6 years eyes, where everything's sort of exciting or really, really stupid. And why do we do that? So it's interesting to see how he responds to it differently.
And it kind of gives you new eyes too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that I just say, well, Chris, that's the way it is. And he's like, well, why? Because it is the way it is. Like there is no standard. Peers measure a person against themselves and against what we consider to be peer-like. Well, what's that really mean? I wish I could explain it. It's kind of like that old definition of pornography. Like we know it when we see it.
Yeah.
But that's not a good answer though.
It's not. And it's and one of the things that I tell my students is everybody has their own path. And I'm here to walk that path with you, and
Right.
just trust me, trust me that I have your best interests at heart, and I'm not going to steer you wrong, and I will go down all the rabbit holes with you.
Right.
So as a peer, you're still in fealty to your knight.
Yes. It's very Norman, isn't it? Like I'm not a Norman, but he is, and so multiple fealties are appropriate. So they're different oaths, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel no conflict. And he's a noble enough person that he doesn't put me into conflict with that.
Right. I find it really interesting how, just as there are many different definitions of what makes a peer, fealty comes in so many different forms. One of my apprentices is a duchess, and I've heard people say that they won't take royal peers as apprentices, and it's like, well, why not?
Right.
I don't understand. But I'm also not, I don't require a strict fealty oath either. So I don't know. Do you have students? Do you have apprentices?
I do apprentices and proteges. Yes.
And are you a person that likes to be approached and asked, or do you ask, or is it kind of a mix?
In my lineage, we do not approach people and ask, because we believe, and I still believe, that puts undue pressure on a person. Imagine, a creator, a server, and I say, hey, what do you think? And they don't think we're a good match. I don't want to set them up for that. So I might say I'm available. If you want to have a conversation about that, we certainly can, but I'm not going to go out and ask someone.
I think I like that way of thinking.
Now, my husband, though, likes to play matchmaker. If he finds somebody that he thinks that I can help, then he'll go out and advocate. I'm just like, dude, relax. Like, you can give the idea and make like open to a conversation, but we don't need to actually matchmake. It's okay.
Yeah. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't have to have someone, I don't have to have an official relationship with someone
Right.
to work with them. I'm
Correct.
gonna help anybody that comes along.
Right.
You know, it's just the way you're built, right?
Yep.
Part of what makes you appear. So what is your service geek? You got a Pelican first. You recognize as a Pelican first. What is your service geek?
Youth combat.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, my son, when he was 9 at the time, maybe 8, and he went to a fight practice and asked if he could do it too. And I said, I don't know. And so I went and did some research and found out that he could. Like, we had a way for youth to fight at their level, to play our game at their level in the way that made it safest for them. So I had to go out and earn a marshal learn the rules, travel around with him. And if I was going to fight, he was going to fight. And so we grew up together doing that in the SCA.
Oh,
And
it's better
so
than Boy
eventually,
Scouts.
yeah, no, it was great. Like, it was such a wonderful place to raise a kid. He was amazing. Just the sense of independence and responsibility. Like, if he didn't re-rivet his armor, guess what? It wasn't going to work next time. And he was going to have a really stressful time before the list opened, or maybe even after it opened. Or if he stayed up too late, he was going to sleep in and the cannon was going to go off with or without it. And so great life lessons in there. And so I became a youth marshal, then a regional marshal, and then a deputy and then the kingdom marshal. And then, and then we ushered in youth rattan. So rattan could be open to youth, and then some youth could graduate into armored combat early. So it was just a long process. And what I found was I was in a kingdom level position as a squire and not a peer at all. And so I was put in an uncomfortable position of sometimes saying no to people that were much more important than me, or saying yes, but to people that were much heavier than I was in terms of status. And I guess I was able to do that without being rude and, with a sense of reason and evidence and politeness. And so that helped.
It's a weird thing to navigate this this hierarchy in this
right.
made up game, and this power that's not really power. And yeah, it's weird.
Well, it is if we assign it power, right? Like,
right.
we all pretend it's real. And that's, there's a local knight named Zippy. He says, one of his favorite, or I perceive it as one of his favorite questions, because I see him ask it often, is like, what's the most important knightly virtue, right? And I watch people wrestle with that. And the one that he often selects in a group is faith. And, which might sound strange because we sort of distance ourselves from mundane religion while we're in here. We might have different aspects of religious things, but we don't have to actually practice here. And he said that we have to have faith that like this means something. Otherwise it's just a piece of metal, really. Like, it's a no status thing, but we imbue it with this faith and trust, and all those award medallions, these symbols of love, we believe they mean something. And so we have faith in them. And so, yeah, it's not real, but it is too. Like, the social relationships are real.
Is your son still fighting?
No, my son is now living with a girl about an hour away, and navigating his young life, trying to figure out his way. But we still have his armor and everything ready for him when he's ready.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Neither of my kids are interested in fighting at all.
Oh. Well, some of my favorite memories with him are fighting. Like, I remember when he finally was able to fight with the adults. We're in Maine at Great Northeast War, and we're fighting in the woods. And this fellow charges out of the bushes and starts to assault me, right? And so I just defend, because I'm only with a spear. So I'm defending myself with a spear and not dying, making the guy grumpy. And my son jumps out of nowhere. He's like, "Don't worry, Dad, I got this." And he's in there, bada, 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 right? So I just look at my spear and I'm like, oh, look, oh, it's so beautiful. I get to have this moment, right? And then another guy comes out of the woods and starts really wailing on him. So my son's now defending himself, and I'm all teary, and he's over his shoulder. He's like, "Dad, can you give me a hand here?" I'm like, oh, yeah.
Pull yourself together, Dad.
Right. So just wonderful memories. I'm so pleased I got to do it with him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it led to service. Like, I believed in it, And, I believe if we want to keep youth around in the SCA, we have to give them things to do or help them create their own things to do. And youth combat was really that way,
Yeah,
I found. And it was an incredible recruiting tool. Like our local fight practices for youth became this really big recruiting tool for the Shire.
that's great. That's really great. I wish that our kids had been more interested in it. Our son is 17 and 6'4" now, and he's built for it, but he's not interested. So I
Yeah,
don't know. Well, let's take a look at some of your pictures.
sure.
And let's look at just pictures first. Get it to work. There we go.
Ah, so that's there's a great event in northern Maine or central Maine actually, but it's in the northern part called the Tourney of Love, and there a fighter is expected to display an arts and sciences project, fence, and also fight in armored combat. And there, Baron Vey, the knight that lives up there, is bestowing upon me a token, and it's a piece of his knighting belt. And
Oh, wow.
that was a really emotional moment. Yeah, love that event. It's one of the first places that Chris and I felt welcome as an out gay couple fighting and playing in that courtly love, real inspiration and all that. So we had gone there and I fought for him there. And it was just really welcoming and awesome.
Awesome. And when the two of you were first in the SCA together, Inspiration Equality was still
Yeah.
in the works, right?
It was there. Like we got together just after inspirational equality sort of became the norm, but it's still like with approval. So I remember our first crown tournament. We walked up in procession, and the entire time he was terrified they were going to say no to us when we were presented to their majesties. And so he's from northern Vermont and really rural, and Vermont's an incredibly progressive state in the
Yeah.
cities, and it's reasonably progressive everywhere else, but people are people. He faced his own set of difficulties growing up here. And so in that procession, like he was gripping my hand with his chainsaw wielding paws he has and just squeezing it until we got up to King Kenrick and Queen Avelina. And, we bow and we step in, and he's ready for them to tell us to go home, that, we just need a king and a queen. I'm sorry, nothing against you.
Right.
And instead the king just walked up and asked him how he got his cloak to drape the way it did. And, it was this beautiful moment, but I remember like that was something I took for granted. Like, no, it's us. It's going to be fine. And he was like,
Yeah.
no, but what if it's not? And he had an experience that it'll be fine. And so he brought all that mundane world anxiety in with him.
Right.
Yeah.
We leading up to Inspirational Equality, we had a series of crowns where it was prearranged beforehand, but same gender couples would present themselves to the crown, and then they would have to not to deny them entry into the list,
Right.
because the SCA rules didn't permit it, and
Right.
it was heart-wrenching.
Right.
The crown cried, everyone in the audience cried. It was theater, but it was very heartfelt.
Yeah.
And very moving theater. And I think it made a difference.
I think so too. That's a powerful form of protest. Like, I really believe that even the most awfully bigoted person is going to have difficulty sitting across from a table from someone they care about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just pictures of my SCA life here, up at a university event in Canada. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's me in the left side of the frame getting a good stab in a bridge battle. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Love it.
Is this Penzic?
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, there's a crown kit. Yeah, that's me at Crown Tourney a while back. Back when my shield was ugly, but that's a fun shield though.
Talk about movement.
Right. Oh, there's me and Chris. Queen Fortune had a gondola made, and so Chris and I are sitting in her gondola.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's Penzic as well. Just being ridiculous. Oh, there's Chris in his combat archer gear on the left.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
and there's my small shield there. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he looks taller in armor. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Are you taller than he is?
We're about the same. I think his helmet's just bigger. One of my favorite people in the whole universe, that's Baroness Jocelyn Despada. She was once Baroness of Stonemarch, just next door, and just a fabulous human being, really giving and warm and welcoming. She's amazing.
Awesome. How do those shoes with no socks do in the snow?
They're fine. I don't plan on staying outside for a long time without them. I have undones that I could have put on, socks with it, but I didn't wear them that day. It was just, that's springtime in Vermont and New Hampshire, so it's really warm outside. It's just snowy, so that it's probably 30 or 35, maybe 40 degrees in that picture. I don't remember it being cold. I mean, I'm in my summer clothes.
Right.
Doesn't look that bad.
I guess we're each acclimated to different kinds of weather.
Right. Oh, I love this photo. That's at a demo, a demonstration. And this one actually got into the newspaper. And so that was a photo taken by the reporter. And it's just this young lady playing with the cotter pin on my helmet. Love that picture. It's the importance of demos, that little bit of wonder.
Yeah, the magic.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's at an old fort in Maine on the coast. That's Fort Knox, the one without the gold. And so there's an annual event there. And so that's there at that event. Love that place. I mean, I know it's the wrong century, but something about being in a stone fortress and having the little gun batteries that make caves and alcoves. It's just, and there's a great kitchen and tavern inside there. And we sort of take it over. Well, the group in Maine does, and I love to go. Just beautiful.
It's fantastic. And you've got another little one following you there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, more silk. That's at Crown Tourney.
And are those all banners that you did?
No, yes, I think so. I think those are all mine. Those are early ones, so I'm looking at the line work and saying, ugh, but that's, yeah. They just add so much pageantry. I love them. Oh, there's another Crown Tourney shot.
Magic.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So this is at Stone March I was teaching, and that's Mundanely, New Hampshire. This sweet lady, she's just always kind and willing to lend an ear, and great lady. I'm glad to have met her. She's over in Stone March. I think it was her birthday today, as a matter of fact. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Yeah. All right.
Let's see. What else would you like to see? Like, this is kind of fun to look at all the people.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Get your art too, but.
Yeah, that's the Warriors of History tournament at Penzic a long time ago, where we had to fight with stabby bits instead of slashy bits. Yeah, lots of movement there.
Is that just restricted to very period kits?
Yeah, that one was had to have a documentable kit. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, as close as we could get. Oh, love that picture of our shields. Yeah. Oh, so this is a fun early photo. This sort of defines my early SCA life. So I'm right where on the right in the red and yellow, and then to my left, sword and shield fighter with a not work helmet is just a little more to the left is Gavin, my best friend in the universe. And then just to the left of him is Kenyak. And so we were like our own triad for years and years and years. We trained with each other, traveled together, pushed each other. And so this is sort of emblematic of our SCA lives. Gavin, the one in black there, likes to joke that I'm all shiny in the front and I distract him and then the other two jump him. And that's usually how they said it would work. Yeah, great. Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's Laurencio. That's a fun shot. That's a great helmet too. Doesn't he have a nice helmet? Love that.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Love that.
Oh.
Oh yeah, Chris and I, after being termed the champion o' love, and the inspiration. So that's Chris with his flower crown. You know, that flower crown was a really interesting moment, right? So here we are. Um, we have the privilege of being cisgendered, right? So we present as male, we are male, have no qualms about being male. We move through life with white male privilege, right?
Right.
So we get to this event, and you know, we're lovable and approachable, and we're a couple, but he's not in any way really female presenting or feminine oriented, right?
Right.
So after I get my regalia for that, I've earned an attorney for him. Then he's called up and he's given something. The Baroness pulls out a box, and she hasn't seen this yet, as far as I know, and she pulls out this flower crown with long pink silk draping going down the back. It almost looked like a stereotypical spring bridal veil, almost.
Wow.
You know, and it was beautiful, and somebody spent a lot of time and care on making it. It is gorgeous. It's really well made. And then here's my lumberjack husband, you know, and she's going to place it on his head. And I could see what I imagined was the hall fell silent for a moment, like, oh, what's going to happen here? Like, is this guy going to be insulted at something so feminine? It was just sort of awkward for a moment.
Right.
And instead, the Baroness and Chris seemed to just look at each other and have a moment. And then she placed it on his head, and he leapt up, and it was a really wonderful moment. And you know, and it was a great opportunity for him to demonstrate that people do things out of love, and even if they don't, they might not think all the permutations through. Like, the assumption in that was that a female was going to be the one that was the inspiration, right? And they never would have dreamed of insulting us, and so having a fit about it would have been insulting to the process at that moment.
Right.
Like, I bet they'll always think of that in the future, but
Right.
we didn't have to rub anybody's nose in it, and we weren't insulted at all. It was just a fun moment. Anyway.
And he looks good in it. He's working it.
Oh yeah, 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 yes. There's Sir Gareth right in the center there in his Roman outfit, and then Gavin on the left. And we had traveled to Nova Scotia for an Apulio, which was a high persona Roman event where Gareth's Roman persona was throwing a feast. And so everything from the food to the table decorations to the hall to everything was sacred ground for that event. And it was just beautiful. Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Oh, I think I skipped.
It's all right. Skip around if you like. No big deal. There's plenty of pictures. I don't expect we're going to go through all of them, right?
Okay.
But there's one of my favorite spots at Pennsic is under the fly. Oh, and in the front there, you see that eagle and the discs on a pole?
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually combat ready. I used axe heads and combat foam and sculpted it all and painted it. So I had an eagle signifier that I could fight with on the field.
Oh, that's super cool.
It was fun, yeah. Hit like a truck. It's almost an immoral weapon. That's me when the king called me into court to tell me to go on vigil for my pelican. And I think you can almost see the disbelief and panic on my face right there. It's at that moment that I was thinking I needed to go home and that I did not want to be pelicaned and I needed to go or my life was going to be over.
Oh, did you have this is kind of an awkward question. If you don't want to answer it, you don't have to.
Please go ahead.
But I know I've had friends who have been offered another peerage before their knighthood, when their knighthood was their real goal. And there was a moment of, this isn't my knighthood, and this is going to make my path to knighthood longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly that. I was not thinking rationally. And I mean, 6 years ago now, so I know much more now than I did then. But from my perspective and from everything I had gathered and from what I thought, that was it. My path to knighthood was done. And I wasn't ready for it to be done.
Yeah.
And so what we can't see here is the king has a grip on my hand that I'm not able to let go. And I wasn't thinking no, I mean, I'm not even joking. I was ready to go home.
Yeah.
And right after this picture, Sir Gareth grabs my arm and his wife gets on the other side of me and grabs the other, and they have me in an escort lock. Like I was convinced I had to go home because this was not okay with me.
Oh,
And, I'm in that fuzz of, did that really just happen? Is
right.
this happening? What is happening? And I thought that it was bad. And I remember this is at Burka too. So I get to the elevator to go upstairs to my vigil room. And I went to turn, and Gwen, Garrett's wife, said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I just need to go to the car." And she said, "No, no, no, you don't. You're fine." And I was better about 10 minutes from now. Like once I mean, every new peer gets this, right? That adrenaline of what just happened,
Yeah.
right? And it's all a blur. And then it was complicated by this error in my own thinking
Right.
and my own misperception. And I just thank the gods that Gareth was there and Gwen was there. I mean, of course, where would they be? Of course they were there, but
Right.
to really help me breathe my way through that first 10 minutes. And then I realized, no, my path is my path. My journey's mine, and I'll earn my knighthood when I show that I'm ready.
Right. Right.
Sometimes I get the doubts though, still, but
Yeah.
I just have to believe that those are thinking errors and have faith in the process.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, long explanation, huh? But
Well, I think it's important to talk about though, because that's not, as I said, I've had other friends that have gotten a pelican and then thought, well, now I'm never going to get knighted. And that's not true.
right, I don't know how often it's not true, but I have to believe it's not true.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a special picture for me. There's my pelican oath, right? I'm ready to be stabbed. And just on the right, the count that's standing there is then, he's the one that was looking at Chris's cloak, right? So that's Kenrick there, then Count Kenrick, and he passed a few years ago. Very difficult situation for us, everybody. I mean, I didn't realize that Chris was brand new, but when we heard of Kenrick's passing, it really bothered him. That was the first king that he ever, like for him, Kenrick was the king, and we all remember our first king and queen,
Yes.
and that was Chris's, and that was the man that welcomed him in the SCA and didn't send him away from Crown Tourney. And so he symbolized all that's good in the SCA and all that's welcoming and diverse. And so I wasn't prepared to see him tonight. I forgot he was in this picture.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, no, it's important to honor everyone's memories and not forget them.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
more we think of them, the more alive they are for us.
It's true. It's how they live on.
Right. But I love this oath too.
Oh.
It shows, no, it's fine. You can go.
Okay.
I love that cloak. Mistress Gwen put that cloak together and embroidered it for like 3 years. So the joke is that I had to wait for my pelican for 3 years so she could finish the cloak. But really she was working on all of the work around the edges, and just then the pelican stuff and the laurel stuff was that. There's Chris and I at Crown Tourney. You can see the smile on his face. We are actually welcomed in here at the East rather than just tolerated. So there's a wonderful gentle named Christiana Crane, mistress now over in Maine, and she puts together a fight book for Crown Tourney, where everybody can look at this book and see who the fighters are by their heraldry and what they look like in and out of armor. And you can see we're bilingual here because we have a large swath of our kingdom. About half of it is, about a third of the kingdom is French speaking up in Quebec. And so, we forget that the geographic center of our kingdom is about Bangor, Maine, and it still continues upward and eastward. And so, I love this little fight card. I thought it was a genius idea, and I'm glad she had it because it's just a treasured thing to be able to flip through and see on the list trees who's whom and all that.
And do you have to ask permission to fight in Crown in advance?
Yes, we have to do a letter of intent. And have our membership out a certain date past the Crown Tourney and Coronation Day, and then be approved. Yes.
We don't do that.
But I think that's everybody, not just us. I think that's it. I mean, everybody has to do a letter of intent.
In the
This
East,
is, what's that? I'm sorry?
everybody in the East Kingdom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So just more fight photos, lots of them. Love fighting. That's at a great event site in Quebec. There's more under the flies at Penzic. Love that stuff. Oh, there's Chris and I. Yep.
See, now you look taller there.
Yeah, I think I am by an inch or so, but then he wears his work boots and he's taller. Yeah, and this is getting my blessing on the battlefield. Oh, there's Chris and I at the Tourney of Love again.
Sweet.
Yeah, more Crown Tourney. Ah, love that picture.
Picture of you.
Yeah, he is so mischievous, as you can see. Like, that's emblematic. I think he's posing, but that's totally my husband. He's always up to some shenaniganry.
So
Yeah, which is probably good for my really regimented former military self, right? Playing a Roman. Like, I believe in organization, everything has a place. And here
yeah.
comes my husband just leaving stuff everywhere.
Levity is really important. So I'm
Yeah.
going to switch to the art pictures.
Sure. So here we'll see a good mix of proper Roman things, medieval experiments, and just fun modern things because I wanted to see if I could. Like that agate ware, that's totally not Roman. It's a Roman shape, but it's different colors of clay mixed together, wedged together, and then thrown to reveal those spirals. It's just, I love that. Love it.
Isn't it a Chinese technique?
Yeah, and then it comes over later. It's really out of my period, so I'm not quite sure the year span that it comes in, but it's just beautiful. You know, so standard Roman shape with a completely anachronistic clay composition.
But they're really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, there's some of my really early stuff at our local Pantaria event. And, you know, just run over off the battlefield, throw my stuff on a table and say, here it is. Those cups I had pit fired. So the black on that is actually from organic material. It's just what a wonderful process.
We've got a wheel now, and our kiln is not working. And so we've been trying to talk ourselves up to doing a pit fire in the backyard.
Oh, it's so much fun. Absolutely. I mean, it's completely at the whim of the kiln gods, though. Once it's in the ground, you can't control anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And is this a competition that you entered?
Yeah, this is just a display, I think, a local display just to show some early work. Yep.
And those look like they're burnished and low fire?
Yes. So the two in the back are burnished. And so in that vial, the glass vial in between the two cups, sort of left rear of frame, that's my early experiments with terra sigillata. Trying to figure out how to make it. And why would Romans and Greeks have discovered this and what could possibly have led to this really fine mud working, and trying to put it all together. And so that cup, sort of center of frame, is the result of that little glass vial's work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I will have to pick your brain about terra sig later because that's one of the rabbit holes I really want to go down.
Oh, it's amazing. The buttery, self-glazing goodness of it is just phenomenal. I mean, it's got such a nice texture, the feel of it. And what I found is an unglazed, just terra sigillata, really finely burnished cup cools water at Penzic because it wicks just enough to keep the water cool. It's beautiful.
It's amazing how they knew these things.
Right, yeah. All right, so that's Mistress Julia. She vends, she's Laurel in bead making. And so these are all of her beads displayed on cups. And she's done me the honor of selling a bunch of my pottery at different events if we share them in common. She's just a phenomenal human being.
I love that she has her beads displayed in shells. That's really cool.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. Heart of Oak Crafts, everybody. Just amazing stuff. Oh, love this little group. Say again, I'm sorry?
Does she have a website too?
I believe she has an Etsy. I think if you search Etsy for Heart of Oak Crafts, you should find her. I have a set of bee beads that I use as to fulfill a bee oath that came from her. She's just amazing documentable work.
And
yeah, I love this.
This is just beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. That one in the lower right-hand corner had a nice crack running through it. Really disappointed.
Oh,
Yeah, it happens. But that's all good Roman ware. Like you can see the sheen of the terra sigillata on it.
and
Yeah, wonderful.
do you use your fingers, or do you use like a piece of leather or plastic, or what do you use when you burnish?
All of the above, depending on the piece and where I'm getting to. I find the most efficacious thing or effective thing is a plastic grocery bag of all
Yeah,
things, which I know is not pure. So I have a nice piece of agate that does wonders. Like it's almost better than the back of a spoon. But when I get in real trouble, just a little piece of plastic is beautiful. But agate does great work.
cool.
Yeah, just some more close up. And that fish plate up above, me experimenting with 12th century Maiolica, which is difficult because it's not, the shapes are not what my body wants to make. I want to make realistic, three-dimensional, perspective-driven, modern perfection things. And instead I have to project flat, look at the actual period examples of like 12th century art. What did they do?
Yeah.
And so I'm still working on that. The fish on that plate is not quite as right as I would like it to be.
How did you get this kind of green in here?
So I'm trying to get a patina glaze that'll fire in low fire, something that would have been plausibly Roman. What I find with the lamps is if I just use terra sigillata the way they would classically be done, the oil will wick through.
Right.
And so, which is fine and all, they're meant to be disposable, but not for modern Scadians, right? We want our stuff to stay nice. So I thought if I put a really thin layer of a reasonable low fire glaze, it would help hold the oil and not have it wick all over the table.
Right.
But that's trying to find out the right consistency of the glaze. I like the lovely copperish patina it gives it,
Yeah, really
but
cool looking.
yeah, not quite right.
You'll get there.
Right. Thanks. Oh, lamps. Wolf lamp. I love that sleeping goat lamp. Probably can't see it, but there's the head of the lamp, the head of the goat. Yep. Yep.
Legs. Yeah.
Yep.
It's really sweet.
Thanks.
And you have goats, right?
Yes.
You raise goats.
Yeah. About 22 of them, I think. Oh, and there's some Greek lamps in the lower part of the frame. And then some Norse lamps on the left there. And then the one you just had the cursor on is a Crusader era lamp from Jerusalem. So lots of different styles.
Very cool.
What I found at Penzik is they're just beautiful working with, like I've used bacon tallow in some of the Norse ones, and I used olive oil in all my others. And they're just, what a gorgeous light it gives off. So that's a bowl that shows all the East Kingdom awards before it actually goes into the kiln. So that's unfired. Well, it's bisque fired, but the glaze isn't fired yet. So just trying to map out all the different awards. There should be one of it finished. Yeah, that's a plate that I love. I did not make that plate. That's a gorgeous plate and I love it.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's slipware. Love it. Yeah, that's me trying to get a cup to come out, but not quite right. Yep. Again, a raw Medusa plate.
And is she a stamp or
I made a mold out of it, so I have a mold of it, and then I make applique or sprig pieces with it when it works. Yeah, there's a whole collection of things, huh? Those grotesque mugs on the right-hand side, if you look closely, they have divots cut out for paintbrushes.
Oh, okay.
So Christiana Crane, a scribal Laurel now, had asked me to make an artist's cup that would be really heavy on the bottom, so it would resist the urge to tip over if it was wobbled, has a brush rest on the top, and then make it a little different so they don't accidentally drink out of it. And so that's what it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a cheese form right above the lamps, that tall cylinder. Yeah, that's a cheese form there. Yeah.
Does it have holes in the bottom?
It does at the bottom. Yep. Yep. So there'll be rings inside it and then holes so that the cheese can get formed and the whey can drain. Yep.
Oh, so cool.
Thanks.
And is the amphora, is that wheel turned or is that?
That's wheel turned and assembled. It's two halves of an object and then the handles applied. they've been giving me terrible trouble, trying to get them to come out right and get that standard bullet shape. And I was able to go to Italy before the pandemic, but I wasn't able to get an appointment to put my hands inside an M4 out. I just need to feel the inside and see if they assembled them in two pieces or not.
Right.
Like I look at the huge North African jars and the big Korean jars, and those are done in stages. I mean, it only makes sense to do
Yeah.
them and I could see, a Roman pottery having, 3 or 4 stations where somebody makes the pieces, then we assemble them at the end, an assembly line. I mean, they are industrial.
Yeah.
They're not art pieces. But I'm still trying to figure those out, get them to be right. That one's not right yet. It's getting there, but it's not it. Yeah, more lamps. Leather hardened. Oh, there's a short cheese press and some lemons and rosemary and goat milk and yep. Oh yeah, face mugs. Love face mugs. Those are fun too.
And do you have a pottery shop set up now at your house?
Yes, I have a studio downstairs, my kiln and everything. I like to pull the wheel out onto the porch in the summer and talk to the goats while I throw. I did that a couple summers ago and did a Facebook Live while throwing just to hang out with people.
That's so dreamy. I love that.
Yeah. Now there's some cheese forms, cheese presses. Yep. Yeah, that's experimenting with some different sides. So that's decidedly modern there, but just fun.
Ooh, I love the crackle on that.
Yeah, that's sodium silicate applied to the outside, and then it dries a bit, and then one forms from the inside only, and it cracks the surface open.
Nice.
Yeah, that's fun. There it is again. Almost looks like tree bark.
It does. It's got this really organic feel.
Mm-hmm.
Are you selling pottery modernly too, or?
Not a lot. I just don't. I'm not a big production potter. I don't like to make the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so if I had a shop, I'd have to make 20 coffee cups a week. And instead, I like to get a bug in my ear about something or try to figure out a problem and go from there.
I'm kind of the same way.
Yep.
It's a little horse head.
Yep. Yeah.
Super cool.
Decorated with some teeth. Yep. Oh, more lamps. Sorry for all the lamps. I love lamps.
They're awesome.
Yeah, these are some early experiments, seeing if I could fire plates in the ground, and they came out okay, but they're not great. I'm glad they survived. Working on a writing of my dog. Cicero, go please. Go on.
Gonna be outside, Dad.
Right. All right, so that's feast gear for my friend Laurencio. He's Italian, or no, Spanish, sorry. And so I'm trying to do some early Maiolica with him. So it's pretty basic stuff, but I love the way it came out. Yep. Oh, I made Gavin a table with his arms on it out of tiles.
And that made him very happy.
Oh yeah, no, that's a fun one. Love that table. Another cheese form. Sorry if these get repetitive. They're just
art is never repetitive to me.
Okay.
I love looking at pictures of art and
yeah,
looking at what people make.
Thanks.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
Kind of nipple cups.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, some reasonable wear, not the best there. That's early.
So how long between your Pelican and your Laurel? Like how long had you been working on your ceramic journey before you were recognized?
The pottery journey was pretty rapid. If it was just pottery, it would be incredibly fast. I think about 3 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
So between my Laurel I want to say it was 2018, might have been 19, but I think it was 18. Um, and my Pelican was 2015, and pottery wasn't terribly long ago. I haven't been a potter for 10 years yet. So it's not like I worked on pottery for 10 or 15 years consistently and then was recognized as a Laurel. Instead, you know, um, Duchess Roxane, or Etheldreda now with a different persona, she said that when she spoke at my Laureling, as one of my speakers, she said that it's hard to find a conversation or even remember one with me in which art was not one of the things we spoke about. And so I think it's always been a part of my journey, whether it was silk painting or, if I needed shoes and nobody had shoes, I'd make shoes, or if I needed a bag, I'd make a bag. And, so a good Laurel friend in Maine said that I'm kind of a stuffed Laurel. I might think of myself as a pottery Laurel, but it's just because if I need something, I'll make it if I have the time.
Right.
And I could buy it for $300 or I could make it for $700 in 8 weeks of my life. So that's usually what happens.
I smell what you're stuffing in there.
Right.
Yeah, when people ask what I'm a Laurel for, I'm not really sure, because I was doing so many different things when I got recognized, and
Right.
so many new things since then. So it's just kind of a weird thing. But it seems to me like you really have gotten into your Roman persona and done a lot of in-depth persona research and just kind of branched out and made all the things you need to be that person.
Right. Yeah, that's a great description of it. Yeah. So pottery, I want to say pottery was fast, but I bet I got my 10,000 hours in over that short time. Like that, like I dream about pottery. I dream about fighting. And so it's hard to pick between the two.
That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
So what is in your SCA future? What are your big goals? And once we get through the pandemic situation.
I want to be a knight if I ever earn the accolade. That's what I really hope will happen. My husband wants to reign, and which would mean winning crown. But I think that if that comes, it'll come when we're both ready for that, and when the kingdom's ready for us. So who knows? Crafty wise, I'm having a terrible time with Samian ware. And that's, the bowl with the sort of X-sized figures on it that are thrown in a mold and then raised from the mold and then assembled. I've made the tools and I have some proof of concepts that function, but they're nowhere near as refined as I'd like them to be. So here's me trying to figure out how to do something that my ancient ancestors made look easy, must be, because this is mass production ware.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out how to make the tools to make the mass production ware possible. And I'm almost there. So it's right on the edge. And there's not a lot of, lots of people can theorize about how it's done, but actually sit at a wheel and do it, buddy, show me. And there aren't those people yet.
Yeah. Do you have potters that you look to and that you bounce ideas off of? Do you have like a community that you work with, or not?
Not that I know of, no. So I do a lot of reading, and
I'm gonna send you contact info for somebody that does the
Amphora.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Awesome. Yeah.
And she's also doing that marbled stuff right now too.
Nice. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, she's an on-tier potter who has been playing forever and been doing pottery forever, and she's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's super, super cool. So as a fighter, do you do a lot of training of other fighters because you're so remote? Do you find yourself in that role?
Yes. Yes. So I have, we have a pretty reasonable fighter practice, bigger than the practices that Gavin or Kenyak or I ever found. And so, early on, we decided that we had to create the kind of society we wanted to see, right? We couldn't find it anywhere else. It didn't exist anywhere that we could find or drive to. So yeah, we have a pretty good practice when we had practice. And every Tuesday when my phone alarm tells me that the calendar event is Panther Vale practice night, I get a little sad. Like today, it's like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be today. And it's been that way for what, 70 Tuesdays since we were able to do it last.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Are you guys doing like virtual Pell practice or anything like that in the meantime?
No, like do the 100-day Pell challenge and things until it becomes a habit, and then just keep doing it. But we haven't done any virtual practices, no. I mean, honestly, sometimes it's all I can do to keep my head above water with my mundane work. Like I'm a high school principal in my mundane world.
Oh my goodness.
And, that's just, it's on a good year, it's too big a job for a human being to do. And during the pandemic, it's worse. Like we're all walking around half full of trauma. And so I don't blame anybody at all if they didn't progress or they didn't keep up with their stuff. Or, I'd love to tell you that I spent the pandemic learning Esperanto, but I'm sorry, I was just trying to survive it, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I hope when we're all back together, we don't have order meetings in which people say they didn't do anything with this year. They had a year and didn't do a thing with it. Well, of course, they lived through it. Let them be. So.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I know I won't let that happen in my order,
Right.
in my kingdom. I think this has been uniquely just insane. The perfect storm of the political upheaval that we've had and this pandemic and trying to get through it. And
Right.
thank you for being an educator through this.
Thank you.
I have two kids that are on distance learning, and it's hard.
Yes.
It's
Very.
so hard.
Well, the pandemic revealed everything wrong in our education system too. Like before last year, we pretended this all worked just fine, but it's incredibly unequal and incredibly penalizing to most of our students, but we pretended it worked, and that's the way it had to be.
Right.
And now that the pandemic came, just blew that wide open. And so I hope coming out of it, students are able to earn their agency and have their voice and say, this doesn't work, and stop pretending it did. And maybe we can build something better. And I almost wonder the same thing about the SCA, right? Like so much of what we do because they did, and because some hippies figured it out and made it up as they went along. And now we take it as gospel because, but really tradition is just oppression by dead people. So, some of the things we do, I couldn't explain to Christopher why we do them, but yeah, here we are. And maybe when we come back from this, we can rebuild it better than it was, in the way it should be, rather than the way it was.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that the SCA is able to transform and become what it needs to be for the next generation of young people coming up.
Right.
I still think of myself as new, but I'm really not. I'm 52 years old. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've been a peer for 17 years. And it's time for me to recognize that, the baton needs to be passed, and other people need to be making the decisions and steering this game where it needs to go for the future. We aren't.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we aren't responsible stewards if we're driving the bus off the cliff on our own path instead of letting somebody else take charge.
Right. I really wonder how much longer. Like, I know it's my duty to report my counsel on candidates, right, for all the various orders. But the more distance that goes between when I entered and now, whatever the now is, how much longer will my perceptions prevail? I know that the bar keeps moving, and I recognize that the things that a person could earn a laurel for 20 years ago are not the things one can earn a laurel for now. And so how much longer will I really have a visceral understanding of that before my counsel is based on opinion and my subjective opinion rather than on any semblance of a standard?
Right. And it's a lot of work to be current and to keep up with what artists are experiencing in the SCA as they come up now. And I have to admit that I'm pretty out of touch a lot of the time. I rely on my younger apprentice to kind of open my eyes a lot of the time. So my job a lot of the time is just to listen.
Right.
We talked a little bit before we went live about equity in the SCA
Oh,
and
that's
how
a hard
much,
one. Yeah.
yeah, how much work we're going to have to do when we get back in person with that, and how much work is going on now with equity. And it's important. And you've talked about being a gay couple and that experience. And thank you for sharing that. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
Well, I mean, let's talk about equity for just a few minutes, right?
Okay.
Like, so much of my public school life is devoted to equity. And so when we talk about equity as a term, like many people have trouble even understanding what that means because they see access, access to goods, services, time, opportunities as a zero-sum game. So if I have access, then everybody must have access. And if everyone gets access, then I lose something in that, right? And so maybe as a white cisgendered male, do I lose something if other people get a little bit more access or ease of access to things? So in my public school world, that universe is entirely oriented to ensuring that every single student who walks through the door, and even those that can't actually get to the door, have an equal access to all of the curriculum and opportunities that the educational system provides. And that means that they shouldn't have to fit into a certain size or shaped peg hole. They should just be able to express and grow and learn at their own pace and reach, the standard doesn't move, but their path to it does, and their approach to how they do it does. But that's not really the way the SCA works. We say you can come, we have a big tent and everybody's welcome, but we don't really mean everybody's welcome. And I say that because, we still have folks that say, I don't see gender, I just see a fighter in a helmet, right? And, you might as well say, I don't see color when you look at a person of color. What you're really saying when you say that, like all the best diversity and equity research in the universe all seems to indicate that if we say things like, I don't see color, what we're really saying is I don't acknowledge that you might be a little different, your life experiences are different and valid, that you might come to something with a different set of experiences. And so therefore, I'm going to treat you as the default, which is me. So when I hear somebody say, I don't see gender, I just see a fighter, I hear echoes of that same sentiment. So the fighters that are around me at my local practices, both of my fighting students are females. Like I seem to be presenting as a safer person or a safe option for female fighters to come and train. I don't know if it's because I'm gay. I don't know if it's because I'm an educator and I know how to teach. I don't know if it's a combination of all those factors. But the fact is, observationally, I see that female fighters, like gay fighters, may approach combat. And I say may because I can't speak for women at all, and I'm just observing. May approach combat a little differently. And there's a great book, well, no, there's a horrible book. I hate this book, but it taught me a lot, called Queen Bees and Wannabes. It's all about female culture in adolescence. I had to read it for one of my tech center director classes years ago. And I remember loathing its approach to females in the same way that Ruby Payne talks about poverty as a culture. And I thought that was incredibly insulting. But if we look at poverty through the lens of culture, it can teach us a lot. In the same way I could look at females through the lens of culture and understand some basics. So something I learned by working with fighters who are female or female presenting is sometimes tears happen. And it's not because they're hurt, and it's not because they did something wrong or I did. It's because stimulation is happening, and tears are an expression of stimulation. So now I know that I don't have to feel accountable or responsible if tears happen. I can just simply say, hey, what's up? Stimulation, hurt, what? And they just, no, stimulated. Okay, thank you. And we move on with our day. It's no big deal. They've also taught me an amazing amount about how misogynistic I am on the inside without even acknowledging it. Like, a young fighter, Embla, came to me one day after a tourney and showed me a bruise all along the inner thigh, right? This series of bruises, and said, you did this to me. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Oh, I shouldn't hit you. And I started apologizing. when if my buddy Phil, my squire brother, had said that, I would have laughed at him and poked it, right? So
Yeah.
why do I poke his bruises but apologize to Embla for her bruises, right? That's paternalism, that's patriarchy, that's inner misogyny. So I think that, I hope that we can examine our institutions of power and see where they deliberately establish roadblocks to access. So knights have to be great fighters. Members of the chivalry have to demonstrate their prowess through fighting. So therefore, it must be okay with us that that's open only to an elite few, right? And so if I were to lose my leg, maybe I'm still on the path, but it's going to be a much different path, right? If I don't, does it work the same way in other peerages? I'm not saying that we should change knighthood. I'm just saying that's an area where we might have some barriers that we might look to address or consider. What are we were just thinking about in a Pelican meeting once, I remember thinking to myself, what privilege is involved in how we evaluate peer candidates now? Do we expect travel?
Right.
If we expect travel, I'm sorry. I know lots and lots of folks who get to maybe 4 events a year, and they're incredibly dedicated Skedians doing amazing things, but they don't have the financial means to travel. So if Chris and I want to go to Maine for the weekend, 5 hours away, and do an event out there, that's easily going to be $300 between the fuel, maybe if we crash at somebody's house, but fuel is a huge expense, especially if we want to cut around all the stuff we're supposed to have. So travel is a privilege, financial security is a privilege. I remember one of my dependents, Anastasia, or Zofia, excuse me, looking at us all in our garb one day, and Sir Gareth had to say, don't worry, they've had 10 years to look like this.
Yeah.
They didn't look like this at the beginning. Like, we forget to tell people that.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm pontificating, but there are so many places in the SCA where we establish barriers to access. And it's a natural human sociological thing, right? Like, we are the us, you are the other. But too often the other just gets up and walks out. And I don't know that we can afford to do that as a society. It's not who we say we are. 2, we should be involved in a constant process of self-evaluation and inclusion that involves more voices. Right now, the only voices that count are your voice and my voice in peerage meetings, and then the royalties' voices. And the rest of the voices, when it comes to the major decisions that affect the populace's lives, they don't really get a say in it. And no matter what we want to say about how inclusive we are, look at the investigative structure that we have for incidents. That doesn't seem to be particularly transparent to the populace, nor does it seem to be entirely effective yet. I think it's being revised. But even we have this whole subtext of secret communication too. Like, if my protege messed something up, you would come and talk to me. Right. We might not necessarily talk to her, and you would hope that I would. Like, there's just so much here that's hidden. Yeah. And it's not it doesn't make it nefarious, but it certainly makes it inefficient. And
it does. And that's one of the crusades that I'm on, is to lend some more transparency. I can only affect my peerage, right? The group that I'm a part of. And I don't like the secrecy. I think the secret, and I think that the youth that are coming up, it makes me sound so old to do that, but I think that they're not going to tolerate that secrecy. They expect transparency. They expect to know what they're getting into. And that doesn't mean that we share what we say about candidates, but it does mean that we share what our process is. And it does mean that we, this is how our meeting structure works, and these are the things we talk about. And no, the fact that you got drunk and were stupid 10 years ago is not still on your record. And we're not still talking about it. We have a time limit on bad behavior. If you have worked to, overcome these things, then you get full credit for that. And I think it's important that we're very transparent about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're the big bad evil, and I don't want to be that. I don't want our parents to be that.
And I wonder too, there are places where we've done really well, right? Well, I guess depends on how you measure success. Like out in the East here, our rapier community, like our fencing community, is really vibrant, and it's growing, and it's bright. And it seems to have a pretty reasonable distribution of males, females, other genders, and people presenting their gender of choice too, their orientation, and doesn't look like it's pigeonholed, right? Whereas you look at armored combat, at least in my experience, it's very segmented.
Yeah.
Um,
I interviewed Master Richard from Belt last week, and he talked about that a little bit. He's a Master of Defense, and he talked about it being a new peerage. And so they have the ability to kind of shape it the way they don't have all of these old structural traditional things to battle. They're being able to kind of create it afresh. And I think it's being reflected in what you're observing.
Well, so I wonder, so one of my big wonders is there something that the defense community is doing? I remember this came out of my whole short story there comes out of a comment. Somebody asked me a question a couple of years ago that said, wait, am I being sexist? Because I'm wondering why. There was a Facebook post about how half of our fencing army's leadership was female, and that somebody noticed that. So why did somebody feel the need to say that? And I said, well, why did they need to feel the need to say that, right? So I wonder, is there something that community is doing that's working to allow and encourage access and participation that maybe we in the armored community can learn from or adapt? And I don't know that they're doing anything differently. The results seem to indicate that, but I don't know what that is. And then, but even is armored combat, does it have a problem? I mean, I don't know. I'm a cis white guy. The only problem I have is that it's kind of locker roomy for me. And so those are the very locker rooms that I tried to avoid as a gay kid. I didn't want to go in those. So there are some fight practices I don't like to go to and others that I really love to go to. And so if that's what other, I'm going to say non-conforming people, because, non-standard, like I don't know how to say it, but if that's my experience, I wonder what other people's experiences might be. And I want armored combat to thrive and grow and be amazing. I'd absolutely love it. There is nothing that gives me a greater persona moment than feeling the pins at ground vibrate as we run. And I know not everyone can have that experience.
Right. And there's a whole, one of the things that I'm kind of putting a lot of my brain energy into right now is women as trainers in the combat culture. And there are these incredible men who are doing all of this work online and all of this training, Branos and Dukshan. My husband is working with the group as well. And there aren't women that are just a naturally part of that group. And it's a circular thing, because women don't see themselves as trainers because they aren't being recognized as trainers by the trainers. And so it's like this, like, how do you break that path? And is it fair to expect the elite female fighters to sacrifice their own journeys to become trainers and to put energies into that into being trainers? And these guys that are training have all their dukes. They've gotten, they've achieved a lot of their goals. So it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to process, and there's no easy fix, right? It's just a conversation that needs to be had. And I'm really thankful that there are a lot of men that are willing to have these conversations and to look at their biases and to look at how they can fix it and how they can enable women and other minority groups within the fighting community find more success and validation.
And, honestly, I think if we can do it, like, pick your group. If we can do it for one group, then we can do it for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the minute we open up our paradigm to assume that not everybody approaches fighting from the same perspective, not everybody's life experiences lend the same kind of response to violence, not everyone's life experiences respond to the same kind of training or lack thereof that we experience in the SCA. The minute we realize that people might need a differentiated approach based on several different factors and how they train, then we're going to acknowledge that this female fighter may need something different than this one or than this male fighter. Or, I mean, as it is now, loner gear in the majority of practices I've gone to does not fit a female form. Like the default is not female.
Right.
And I was a tech center director for a long time, and we always have to work on equity. And one of the major takeaways I had there was, why don't more males go into nursing? Well, a pretty simple one is you go in there and the gloves don't fit. You know, nothing says you don't belong here, like the stuff doesn't fit your body.
Right.
And then we do that to female fighters all over the kingdom.
It's
So we're getting better.
It's a common thing for female firefighters too.
Right. And then we wonder why it's male dominated. Right. So I know it's getting better. It's never getting better fast enough. But, you know, in the same way in public school, if we make good accommodations for every kid, then it's just good practice. And we can do that for everybody that fights too. It doesn't have to just be for the few.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it reminds me, Coach's Corner did a segment on training neurodiverse students.
Oh, nice.
Which was awesome. It was really awesome. So if anybody has neurodiverse loved ones, that was a really great discussion.
Thank you.
They're doing some really great work. And I just want to acknowledge that. People are working hard at this, you know, and it's not a flawless work, but people are really working hard. So I have a lot of hope.
Yeah, we'll all fail forward together.
Yes. I'm gonna quick look at comments and see if there's any questions.
Okay, I haven't even been doing that at all. I should have, huh?
No, it's my job.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep up with it usually. But I got really sucked into our conversation.
Sorry.
Good. Lots of love. No questions, so that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for tonight. This has been really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have enjoyed getting to know you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Tomorrow's sisters interview has been canceled, so there will be no sisters interview tomorrow, which is fine. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And there are a couple of weeks in April coming up that are really crazy busy. There's a lot of interviews coming, and I do not have my calendar with me, so I can't list them all off, but they're all on the page. So you will be able to take a look at the sisters interview page and
awesome.
See those. Again, thank you so much for spending your time with me, and thank your husband for giving up his evening with you.
Oh, he's been asleep since 8. He gets up at 5 and cuts trees all day. He falls asleep right away.
Oh.
But I will. I'll thank him.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.